Living a life of faith is preoccupied with Christ's glory and how we can be a part of a blessing to someone else. Letting God use me to be a blessing to someone else. But that's not easy, is it? Every year, ever since my daughter was young, my wife and I would take, at least once a year, take her and her cousins, my nieces and nephews, to Disneyland each summer. And typically our trip back to the US would, usually our first day back, we would take all of the kids and go straight to Disneyland. And it's a good way for Krista, Elizabeth, and I to get over jet lag as well. But I remember this one particular time we were driving, got the kids. Kids were so excited. My sister said that they didn't even sleep the night before. We all got in the car as soon as we arrived, headed over to Disneyland. But there was traffic. And the reason why there was traffic, it was because I noticed that there was a accident up the road. And I looked in it and I told the kids, it looks like there's an accident ahead. And sure enough, there was a big accident, not our car, but some other car, and the ambulance was there. And as I came to the accident, I said to the kids, I said, look, those people are in the car are hurt. It would be maybe a good idea for us to pray for them. Who would like to pray? And all the kids were silent. Nobody volunteered. And then my nephew, David, little David, well, he's a college student now, but he was little at the time. And he asked, Uncle Jason, do we have to? And I was surprised that he said that. And I said, well, we don't have to, but it would be good thing to do. Who'd like to pray? And nobody said anything. Then David jumped up and he said, okay, I'll pray. Dear God, help these people who are in the accident. Help them if they're hurt. And please, God, don't let this wreck block our way to Disneyland. And after he prayed that, we kind of all laughed. It was kind of funny. But that's like the way we are sometimes. We can get so used to focusing on ourselves. But a life of faith is never concentrated on ourselves. A life of faith is focused on Christ, thinking about how we can be a blessing to others. It's never selfish. It is selfless. This lockdown has taught me a lot of things. This lockdown that we've been experiencing here in Shanghai can really produce the best in us or the worst in us as human beings. It can produce selfishness, like woe is me, look at my problems, or it produces selflessness, how we can be a blessing to others. I'd like to share just two things that I've learned from actually talking to some of you in terms of what you've been doing during this lockdown to practice selflessness. One is practice and encourage family worship. Practice and encourage family worship. As you're sitting watching this TEF online service, I would encourage you to watch this with others. Don't just watch it by yourself. Well, if you're by yourself, then obviously watch it by yourself. But if you're with your family, just watch it together as a family, or with your roommate, or with a group of friends online on Zoom together. I would encourage you to listen to the sermons together. Sing, not by yourself, but sing together, even if there's only just two of you. And then as a family, give your offering as a family. So do this together, this online service together. Another one is caring for your neighbors. Caring for your neighbors, especially the elderly in your compound. Maybe help give them food. Maybe at least help carry up their deliveries that are ordered for them. A lot of the elderly don't even have WeChat. And so maybe you can help them with ordering things. And also just let your neighbors know that you're praying for them. This is a great ministry opportunity, a great evangelistic opportunity that you can give toward your neighbors. So those are just some examples. Maybe you have some examples too. And maybe after the sermon, you can talk as a family or as roommates or as friends, like how can you practice selflessness during this lockdown? So a life of faith, it benefits others. A life of faith is selfless. And then lastly, a life of faith is persevering. Now you can't look at this passage without thinking about how persistent these friends of the paralytic were. These guys never gave up. Obstacle after obstacle, they overcame them because they had one goal, and that was to bring their friend to Jesus. How easy it would have been for them to say, well, it's just really crowded today. We'll just come back tomorrow. How easy it is for them to have made excuses. But they didn't do that. They were persistent. You ever notice like that we as people tend to make excuses for not doing the right thing. Sometimes if we know it's the right thing, but we just don't want to do it. We'll make any excuse sometimes. The weather, or, oh, I'm just too tired. The weather's rainy today, so we just got to skip church. Or, I'm just too tired, so I'll just forget about fellowship tonight. We tend to think like that when we don't want to do the right thing. Well, these guys, they had a faith that was persevering. It never gave up. Back to that story about Disneyland when we were there, when the kids were really young. I remember we were waiting in line for this one ride. I think it was Finding Nemo ride. We had to wait over 2 hours. It was a very long line at the time. And I remember about an hour into our wait, we lost Elizabeth, our daughter Elizabeth. She was very young at the time. And my wife and I freaked out. We were like, where is she? And so we had the other kids kind of just wait in line. And then we went to look for Elizabeth. And then I found her. She was all the way, she cut through the line all the way to the front of the line because she was so anxious to get on this ride. I was so embarrassed. And I said, I'm so sorry. And I grabbed her and brought her back in line with us. Well, these friends of the paralytic, they never gave up. They were not embarrassed to cut through the crowds, even digging a hole through the roof so that they could bring their friend to Jesus. They had a faith that not only believed that Jesus could, but Jesus would meet their friend's needs. They didn't simply just pray about it, but they put some feet in their prayers. They didn't let the difficult circumstances discourage them. Real faith perseveres. It doesn't make excuses. And Jesus, knowing everything, waited until their faith was expressed with such perseverance before blessing their friends by healing him, physically and spiritually. Living a life of faith is tenacious. It has a track record of perseverance. It doesn't give up. It's not circumstantially driven. There's a story about a leper in a leper colony, actually here in China. Believe it or not, there are still leprosy here in some parts of the world, even here in China. It's called Hansen's disease. But this particular, and TEF used to send teams there once a year. It's actually pretty hard to get to. You have to fly there, and then you have to hike another 8 hours just to get to the leper colony, leper village. And this particular person became a Christian there at this leper colony and had a tremendous impact on others. Anyway, there was a reporter that heard about this Christian leper in China. And this reporter came all the way from England, and he was just curious, like, how did this person become a Christian all the way up in the middle of nowhere? So anyway, he wanted to interview this person, flew all the way to China, did the 8-hour hike just to meet with this particular leper. And when he did, he got a chance to interview him, and he asked this Christian leper that he heard that he had become a Christian, and wanted to hear, how did he become a Christian? How did Christ find him all the way here in the middle of nowhere? And the leper said, well, when I was young, there was a missionary that came and said he wanted to share the love of Christ with me. And the reporter was just amazed, and he said, is that when you became a Christian? And the leper said, no, that's not when I became a Christian. And the reporter said, what did you do to the missionary? And the leper said, well, I spit at his face, I threw my food at him, and I cussed him out. and the reporter was just like astonished. And he said, what did the missionary do next? And the leper said, well, the missionary came back the same time the next day and said, "I'd like to share with you the love of Christ." And the reporter said, "What did you do?" And the leper said, "I spit at his face, I threw my food at him, and I cussed him out." And the reporter is just amazing. He said, "How did you become a Christian?" And the leper said, "Well, after this guy kept on coming back, more and more, I just realized that maybe this Jesus is somebody that I need to learn about." And so I finally relented, and I said, "Okay, tell me about this Jesus." And the missionary went on and said, "Well, he told me about how Jesus, what he did on the cross for me, how he died for my sins, and how he rose again. And if I put my trust in him, that I will be saved forever." And the reporter said, "Great. Did that happen the third or fourth time when the missionary came?" And the leper said, "No." Well, then the reporter asked,